wherever you go in life, there are hierarchies which you have to abide by. Whether you like it or not, there are situations that you find yourself in where there are these like invisible forces that are around you which basically act upon you, whether you realize it or not. When you go to the professional environment, whether it be the hospital, the law firm, the shopping center you work at, it doesn't really matter. There's always a manager, there's always a boss, a line manager, and that person has a boss themselves, and it kind of goes up and up and up. So if you find yourself in a room with your colleagues, your peers, and the boss walks in, all of a sudden there's a change in the atmosphere, there's a change in the presence, right? And then after that person, if that person's boss comes in, there's also a shift of power when that happens. So wherever you go, there's always this power difference. You guys have probably noticed that yourselves. You know, you kind of feel less confident, you feel less vocal when you're in the presence of a more powerful being. Now, these social structures that are upon us, they're kind of weird, but they act upon us. So if you go to work, right, and you are doing your daily thing, the person who is the boss holds the most amount of power socially. They kind of say what goes. But if you take that same person, right, and you go to the Friday night soccer or basketball, all of a sudden that person might not be the most dominant thing because we've removed that individual from that environment. Now we're playing soccer. That person's got no idea about soccer. You know how to play soccer. All of a sudden you are calling the shots because you're exhibiting the most amount of power in that social interaction. You are the best soccer player. Isn't that interesting? Now, overlaying all of this are forces which are psychological deep down in our biology. Everybody listens to the big guy. If you are physically imposing, it doesn't really matter if the boss is there or if the boss's boss is there or the boss's boss's boss is there. When you are physically intimidating, that presence almost overlays everything else. Because there is something deep down in us, evolutionarily speaking, we are afraid of the biggest physical presence. Because deep down in our mind, maybe like 1% of our mind, our reptilian brain, our like primitive freaking most, far back, in the evolutionary, point, there is an element of our brain that goes, if she goes down here, this big guy's going to kill everyone. That kind of thing. And that plays its role in the business environment, the corporate environment. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said that when he worked in this accounting firm, this finance firm, big, like, top 4 in Australia, he noticed, when we were kind of talking, he noticed, man, like all of the bosses of different kind of groups, I don't know, line managers or whatever, they're all like 6'3", 6'4" men. I don't think that's by a fluke, because when a 6'4" person comes into a meeting, comes into a social gathering, where people are kind of going to discuss the business, that 6'4" person that's 120 freaking kilos holds a presence before they even open their mouth. Right? So they might not be the most intellectual, the most, rightful person for that job, but they have this presence before they even open their mouth. It starts with a freaking handshake. If you shake somebody's hand and they're like, man, this dude's in the room. This is not a freaking little 12-year-old girl. This is a man in front of me, man. This is a big hunk of meat, right? There's a presence about that. And then every point after that, you're almost kind of ahead of the 8 ball. This is a real thing. This is an absolute real thing. And so, what shows us that, what gives us that social dominance? There's a few things. Obviously, just sheer mass. 6'4", 120 kilos, that is a hunk of man. But there's also a way to exhibit presence and power even at a smaller height. So there are certain body structures that when trained, when hypertrophied, they make you look bigger than you are. The first thing that I'm thinking about is traps. When you see somebody, even in a collared shirt, and the freaking traps are like sticking out of that shirt, you're like, okay, this person is capable. Forearms, like if you're wearing a t-shirt, forearms, like vascularity of the forearms. Strong handshakes, a wide back. You can see a wide back on somebody. If they're wearing a nice shirt or whatever it is, business, you can see backs through even like a suit, right? There are certain things that we can do to make ourselves more powerful. In the fitness, in the gym world, right? It's really isolating groups, like from the professional to the sports to the gym. The guy who squats the most holds the room the most, right? So picture yourself in a room of like 100, 150 people. Who do you think is going to have the most respect? Who do you think the audience is going to completely die down to listen to? The strongest guy. If Ed Cohen walks in and he starts talking, everyone's listening, man. If Michael Jordan walks into a convention of basketball players and he starts speaking, do you think anyone's going to override him? Everyone listens to him. It's a natural thing, right? So that is a natural thing. But then there is the physical aspect overriding everything. Like I always keep it's interesting. I always kind of keep an eye out on historical figures. There is King Dušan. I don't know. He's a Serbian king back in the medieval era, I suppose. They say that he was like freaking almost 7 feet tall. The horse could barely ride him. Barely carry him. He had like this huge presence, and like I'm thinking about it in this frame, and I'm thinking, who the hell is going to challenge a 7-footer back in the freaking 13th century, 12th century? Who is going to walk up to a 7-footer with a freaking double-handed sword and be like, yeah, mate, I disagree with you? Back then, it was all about physical presence. I don't care what you have to say, man. Can you beat me as a warrior? You can't. Sit down. That kind of stuff. And there's other figures like, Genghis Khan, he wasn't the biggest guy. Alexander the Great, he wasn't the biggest guy. Napoleon, he wasn't the biggest guy. But what they did was they held the room in other means. They were basically like evil people. They've killed thousands of people. They were ruthless. If you made a mistake, you're dead. You lose your head immediately. But imagine if Napoleon was 7 feet. Imagine if Alexander the Great was 7 feet. Imagine if Genghis Khan was 7 feet. I don't know how that would go for him with the bow and arrow and on the horseback. But you can see how the physical presence just inhibits social interactions. You might be versing somebody that's really, really more intelligent than you, but if you have that social presence, you might hold the room over them. Certainly when it comes to fitness, when it comes to this culture that we live in, the barbell culture, the person who is the strongest, the person who is the most impressive holds the room, not the most intelligent one. And that is a distinction that I've realized, and I always kind of sit there and I scratch my head. Nobody cares about the guy who's speaking so well. If you don't have credentials behind you, if you don't have numbers, if you don't have something that's really impressive, no one's going to listen to you. No one's going to listen to the fat personal trainer. Nobody's going to listen to the skinny chef. That kind of thing. It is interesting, isn't it? There is like one wing where we're talking about, are you good at your job? And then there is another thing which supersedes everything, which is that physical presence. Physical presence. I find that remarkable. I find it remarkable that there is a financial firm that every freaking boss in there is a 6'4" tall guy. I don't think that's by accident. And I think all of us can work. Yeah, I'm 6 foot. I'm not going to go to 7 feet. I'm not going to go anymore. But we can all work on that physical presence because that is like a biological, baseline for all of us. If you improve your physique, you will get better in every facet of your life, not just the gym. Appreciate all of you guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.